Welcome to the speaking module of the ultimate guide to hacking Ielts. I'm going to go out there and tell you that speaking is my favorite test among the four modules. And that's because it's just 11 to 14 minutes, and when you're actually in the interview, you don't even feel like where the time has gone by. Well, I hope that by the end of this module, speaking will be your favorite part of the test as well. And that's because about 40 to 45% of the test will be predictable to you. Meaning, before going to the test on the actual test day, you would actually already know what kind of questions are going to be asked. And for the rest 50-60%, you'll be feeling confident because you will have an exact roadmap to answer every question in your way. Speaking has three parts. Let's call them part 1, the interview, part 2, the speech, and part 3, the discussion. Part 1 is like an interview. The examiner will ask you some basic questions about your hometown, country, hobbies, etc. By the time you finish the speaking module of this course, you'll have 70 to 80% of answers already prepared. Part 2 is like a speech. The examiner will provide you a topic card and you'll be required to talk on it for 1 to 2 minutes. By the time you finish the speaking module, you'll have exactly the structure on how to prepare for this. And part 3 is like a discussion. There will be 4 to 5 questions, they will be abstract, and it will be form of a discussion. It's 11 to 14 minutes long, where part 1 is 4 to 5 minutes, part 2 is 3 to 4, and part 3 so on. But this is not hard and fast rule. On the test day, it might vary. Well, more importantly, you won't even have an idea of how the time will pass by. Lastly, it's a face-to-face interview where you'll be sitting with an examiner in the examiner's office. Let's look at some of the frequently asked questions for speaking. Does my accent matter? I know most of the South Asians feel that our accent is inferior to the Western accent. Well, that's not true for IELTS. If the examiner can understand you clearly, your accent does not matter. Just take this thought out of your head. And is it bad if the examiner interrupts your answer? Well, it's not necessarily bad. It can be for many reasons. Examiner has a time limit. Examiner has to move on to a different question, has to cover all the questions. So she might interrupt you. Or the examiner is satisfied with your language already, and she wants to test a different aspect of your thinking. So he'll just interrupt and move on. But lastly, if you've gone off topic, examiner will interrupt and ask a different question. But don't worry about it. If it only happens once, it doesn't really affect your score because there's so much more for the examiner to judge you on than going off topic in one of the questions. We'll go into each of these parts in detail. But first, as always, let's look at our fundamental hacks that you will be using for all these three parts.